right. Hi, this is Atkin, and welcome to Railway Empire 2 Fundamentals, Designs That Work. In this new series, we're going to cover various three-city cluster designs that will help you get a handle on your city growth, have effective city growth that you don't have to overmanage or micromanage. Just really good city growth fundamental setups and designs that will absolutely grow cities the way you want them to without too awful much effort. Now, let's take first of all a look at what determines city growth. Okay, so there are basic ideas, and I'm going to assume you already know how to look up what is the demand fulfillment of a city. If demand fulfillment exceeds 60%, the city grows. The more over 60%, the faster the city grows. So 80% demand fulfillment grows faster than 65% demand fulfillment. Immigration offices are the best accelerator of that growth rate. If you struggle to keep demand fulfillment over 60%, replace those immigration offices with libraries to give you that 10% fulfillment to help you kind of get over that 60%. So you've got to get over the 60% to get growth. As long as you can stay even at 61%, use an immigration office if it's available. If you struggle to keep that 60, again, use the library. At 100,000 population, you've got to replace the library or immigration office or whatever you're using with a university to continue growth. So you're at that point, you've got to keep your demand fulfillment up without the help of a library, and you don't get the accelerator of the immigration office. However, the city's bigger and you still get really good city growth by having a university in place. Passengers and mail have zero impact on city growth. This is all about raw materials and manufactured goods and demand fulfillment. The raw materials that you bring in that are needed by factories do not count in calculating demand fulfillment. So if you are, let's say you put in a ceramics business in, or there is a ceramics business in a city, it needs coal and clay. The coal and clay do not count toward the calculation of the demand fulfillment. It's not a need of the city. It's not a fulfillment of the city. So it's not part of the calculation. However, now the ceramics that you're producing might be, if your city's big enough to demand the ceramics, the actually manufactured ceramics could well count toward the demand fulfillment, but the manufacturing or the supplying of the goods to manufacture that good do not count. Warehouses are optional, but they can be highly effective to promote city growth. So going back through these, if you understood everything I just said, if it all made sense to you, then from this point of view, you're good to go. Now, if this part you kind of struggle with, I would suggest you go back and watch the video. There will be a link up here, way up here in the right corner of your screen, and it'll have a Railway Empire 2 Fundamental City Growth playlist. So that playlist has 4 videos in it. And if this part up here just didn't make sense to you, go watch that video called City Growth. All right? Then if this last part down here, the warehouses part, if you don't understand how warehouses work and how they look down the line, they look for demand, they look to see if they have supply, and they monitor and manage how goods get shipped through your system. If you don't understand that, have a clear understanding of it, there's a video up there in that list for warehouse fundamentals. I would suggest you watch that. Then this last little bit down here, this is all about how many trains do we run. Now, if I said to you, well, we've got a demand of 3, that means we need a frequency of 18, so we're going to have to run 3 trains. If what I just said makes perfect sense to you, you follow along on other videos that I've done, and that kind of terminology just clicks with you, then you're good to go. If not, I would recommend that you go back and watch a couple of videos from that list. The second and third one actually in the list are about how many trains to run and how to optimize your clusters. So they will give you some insight into what I'm saying when I say, well, we got a demand of 3, we need a frequency of 18, we've got to run 2 trains, right? All right, so if you're good to go, let's keep going with this video. If you're not, if there's any piece of that that you just don't quite get, please go back to the link up here to the upper right of your screen and watch the relevant videos from that list. All right, so let's keep going. Now, for city growth, the best strategy that I can give you is to look for a 3-city cluster. Now, the cluster is my terminology. It's something I kind of invented. That is, too bad I didn't copyright it. That is basically saying, it could be one, but it's really 2 or more cities working together in a symbiotic relationship to help one another grow. And what that meant in Railway Empire, the original game, is that we would go out and look for meat, beer, right? We would look for beer meat lines, and we would have those. So we would be running a lot of times 2-city clusters, but we could expand it to 3 or 4, whatever, just as we do in Railway Empire 2. Now in Railway Empire 2, it's a little different, because if we look at the supply chain for Railway Empire 2, we see that cloth is actually an early requirement. Now this applies to the campaign missions, to all the base game scenarios, to anything you do in the base game supply chain. This is true. Now in the DLCs, the supply chains are slightly different, but the same principles apply. So, and you may have to modify slightly if cloth doesn't come up right off the bat or whatever. But what we really want would be, we want lines that have meat, beer, and cloth, or clusters rather, that have those 3 elements, and we want to be able to exchange those elements between the cities. Now there are various ways we can do that, and if you guys like this content, please hit the like button right now. Don't wait. Hit the like button, add a comment and say more please, because we can cover a lot of different designs. And a lot of these designs are redundant in the sense that if you've watched all my other Railway Empire 2 videos, you've probably seen most of these, but we're going to do one at a time and focus on them. And we're going to focus on a particular one here in just a moment, as soon as I get to cut these basics out of the way. So we want a 3-city cluster. We want to be able to move the goods between the cities, and we want to bring all the relevant raw materials into the cities. So I'm going to go away right now and set up this first one that I want to share with you, which is my favorite. I call it the Nearness of You, and it's based on the proximity of the raw materials to the cities in our cluster. I'll be right back after I get that base set up, and I do want to say one last thing before I go. Notice all these trains queuing up. What we have here is I've just gone through and made a really simple passenger mail line, right? So these are all passenger mail lines connecting these cities to create a basic economic engine, and also to illustrate, all else being equal, always have dedicated passenger and mail stations, a station to handle your express trains, and that way you can set them up with the bonus buildings, the restaurants and market halls and post offices, however you like to do that. That's a topic for another day, but have that set up and then build your city growth in conjunction with that. So that's what you see here, and we're going to use this as the base as we come back, and we're going to come back to this if we do more videos. If you guys hit that like button and you enjoy this, we'll build more videos like this using this same thing as our base. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go out now, as I said, and set up the Nearness of You, and then we're going to talk about the basic principles we're trying to do with it and how it works. All right, so I have built out the basic structure for the Nearness of You. So remember, this is a 3-city cluster where we have meat, beer, cloth, and we're using the proximity of the raw materials to determine where we have the entry point, the single entry point into the system for that raw material. So for example, the lumber is here relatively near Toledo. There's grain near Toledo. There's also cattle for the meat industry. We see veggies over here, they're later. Then we see grain again near Grand Rapids. Any corn for the system is going to come from here, so it's close to Grand Rapids. The sugar is more or less equidistant London, Grand Rapids. If it's closer to London, so to spread it out, I put it over here. And so we have lines that connect to warehouses. So in London, there's a London freight station. It has both maintenance and warehouse. Now, this is something I had tended to stay away from, putting maintenance in my freight stations in the cities. I'm actually finding I like it. And we'll run this later, and I'll show you the results. But I'm finding putting it here is very useful, because that way you don't forget one of your raw material stations, and you can later add it to the raw materials as things get busier and busier. But I do like this idea, and I do like the maintenance at 100%, by the way, just as an aside. But back to the task at hand. Our warehouse here, our warehouse in London, is set up to handle sugar. Okay, so we have a direct line sugar into London. Over here, we have Grand Rapids, and remember, it's the beer producer. So this line here is meant to be dedicated to the beer industry. And if this grain over here did not exist, then this would be our grain for the whole system. But as it is, we're going to use it for the beer, and we're going to have another one over here to get grain into the system for city growth. Now, we have a warehouse here in Grand Rapids, and it takes the corn. Notice it doesn't take the grain, because again, the grain line here is dedicated really to the beer. Now, over here, we've got lumber and the grain. So in Toledo, there is a warehouse that is taking the grain and the lumber for the system, for the 3 cities. In the case of the grain, really for the 2 cities, Toledo and London. All right. So now, how many trains do we run on this, and how do we get these goods around? First of all, any place we go with the raw materials, we have to get them into the city itself and the rest of the cluster. So we need city-to-city lines. So we need to be able to go from Toledo to Grand Rapids with meat and beer, and with lumber and grain going to Grand Rapids, and with corn coming back from Grand Rapids, right? So what we could think about here is there are several ways to think about this. Early going, you have to kind of let your money be your guide. How much money do I have? How fast am I bringing it in? I want a lot of trains, but I can't have them all right away. So what I would suggest you do on these lines is think about, well, I've got one manufactured good, I've got a couple of products going out, I've got one manufactured good, one product coming back. So the long pole in 10, if you will, so the 3 from here. So if I had a supply of 3, I would want a frequency of 18. Again, if that's foreign language to you, go watch the videos on how many trains do you run and how do you optimize your clusters. But I've got a 3 here, so I would want to set up a line, Toledo Freight to Grand Rapids Freight, and it is going to be a freight line. And we would look at that and say, and we're running these little 1830s trains that are kind of pathetic, but we would look at that and say, okay, it takes 15 days for one train, and we said we wanted a frequency of 18, so we're good. One train is fine. All right, so that's going to exchange. That's going to take meat to Grand Rapids, beer back. It's also going to take eventually, as these are loaded, it's going to take lumber and grain this way, probably more lumber than grain, and it's going to bring back the beer plus corn at this point back to Toledo. Now we need to be able to go from Grand Rapids to London with the beer and the cloth, and we would use the same process. We would look at it and say, okay, over here I've got one raw material and one over here I've got one raw material and one manufactured good, the cloth and the sugar, and over here I've got the beer and the corn, so they're identical. So you've got kind of a 2 demand or supply going on here, which means we would want to have this line to start off with. We would want to build a city-to-city line that meets a 28 frequency. So if we go in here and make our freight line, we can see one train actually does that in the early going, right? And then, let's see, did I build my other track? I think I'm missing track. No. Yeah, I am. I'm actually missing the track, and this is where it gets clumsy. I'm missing the track that goes from Toledo to London Freight. And I'd really like it to go, I'd love for it to go out here and then cross over. So I think the easiest way to do that would be to get away from this mess and just kind of come off like this. And I didn't have this one already set up. One, I kind of forgot about it. And two, it's a good thing because it does show you that with the dedicated passenger lines, you have to think about the trade-offs that you're creating by having those. And one of those trade-offs, I want to come off a little earlier on this. We need to be able to get out of here. We don't want to come in right at that intersection. We want to come in maybe up here somewhere. So what's it going to take for you to do this? And maybe it won't. Oh, it wants to hug it a little bit. Okay, hug it and then come off. Okay, we can do that. And we can come down here like this. And then we can come into our system over here. On the outside line and the outside line, and that's awfully slow. Can we make that a little faster? Of course we can. All right, that'll allow us to go from this side to that side. Beautiful. All right. And then we will, that wasn't as bad as I thought it might be. I mean, we're digging a trench, Mariana's Trench there, but still, it's not bad. And can we come down here and hook in? Certainly can. There we go. That was beautiful. Okay. Like that. Give it signals. Give it some repair or supplies. There we go. Now, let's have a line for our London Freight going to Toledo, right? And it's the same kind of deal. We've got 2 here. We've got 3 here. So we'll do it from the perspective of 3. So we would want an 18 frequency coming out of London to Toledo. So an 18 frequency, if we put a train on it with freight only, it's 25 days. We're going to need a couple of trains to get that done. All right, so that's our city line. So now we can transport between them. Now we need to be able to set up our raw materials coming in. So how would we do that? Well, we would look at that early on and just think of it. You could just think of it as a demand of 1 for the whole system, because if we look at these small towns, Toledo's demand for lumber right now is 0.5, right? So technically it'd be like about a 1.5 here. But if you could just get a train on it, you're probably in pretty good shape. What I like to think of it is 1 per city, which would be a 3. So our lumber to Toledo, it's going to run full. It's going to be a freight train. And 14 days, I would like to have it have a frequency of 3, which is 18. So that one would be good, okay, in early going, right? Then we're going to have the grain for 2 of the cities, so a 2. So we would like to have a frequency on our grain line here. And I must have a mistake in this. I do, my bad. I apologize. Have a little goof up. I'm going to have to go out and fix that on the base because I tend to reuse that. But I had that running into 2 track and I didn't mean to. There are 2 platforms. There we go. All right, so now the grain can run into Toledo on a run full with freight, and that's only 6 days, so we know that's good. And you can just eyeball it and see that it's good because it's such a short line. Same thing here with the cattle. The way to think about cattle, we do want cattle coming into the meat. We do want grain coming directly into the beer. Not just trusting the warehouse system, and we do want wool coming directly into the cloth producer. And the cattle, we want to think about it as a meat in each one, and they're 1-to-1 with the meat in terms of the cattle. So we would want like a 3 frequency here and a freight line, and we can see it's very, very fast. It's a short line, so it's good. But the other thing we're doing, and it's worth noting for all of these, is when we say I want such and such a frequency, what I'm doing is setting up a delivery capacity that's fast enough to meet the demands of the city, plus signal to the owners of these raw materials, in case we're not the owner, that, hey, you can see the delivery capacity we have and the demand that's out there. Why don't you grow appropriately so that you will be producing enough to match that demand? And they will over time grow. Typically, sometimes scenarios have specific ones that seem to be marked not to grow, right? They really do. And if that's the case, then you may have to buy it and handle it yourself. But that's kind of an exception. Yeah, as a rule, these guys will ramp up and produce more in accordance with how much demand they can reach and how much capacity have we created with train delivery to get the goods into the cities that want them. All right, so now we've got that going, and I just wanted to make sure that this line, since we did that track, we've got London freight to London, and I want to look at its this guy. I want to look at its line. Yeah, I took that track, of course. All right, good, beautiful. So we've got grain, we've got cattle. And by the way, I do think it's a good practice to name these raw materials, because now I can look, it's easy for me to look at Grand Rapids, for example, and look at all the lines and say, I don't have the corn coming in because there's no reference to the corn station. So I can say, okay, I want corn into Grand Rapids. I want it to run full. And it's 14 days. Now the corn needs to be in 18 because we're thinking about an early demand of 3. And so that's good. And then the other one is we would want to have a line coming in for the grain, specifically for the beer. So we can do a run full line from here. 6 days, that's beautiful because we only need like an 18 capacity. And then the sugar, I don't think we have anything here, do we? We do not. So let's put sugar in. Again, it's going to be an 18 because it's early demand for 3 city cluster would be 3. And that's good. 10 days is good. So now we've got the basic growth set up, and we can just let this run. And I would think of this as phase 1 of our city growth, right? So phase 1 would be to get all these lines set up. You'll also notice that this is 4-track. This is 4-track for the freight station. I would advise you to get to 4 platforms on your freight stations as quickly as you can. The beauty of the passenger mail is you never need to leave 2 tracks. 2 platforms is just always plenty unless you're going to run a lot of trains out of a specific station. But the freight is more expensive to set up and pays you less. Other than that, it's wonderful because you have to have more stuff. But as you can see here, look at this. We're already getting growth in Toledo and growth in Grand Rapids. Now, the other thing to talk about real quickly as we're kind of getting into depth in this one. Now, the future videos I'm going to make in this series will not talk about all these different topics. They'll just go into the design itself, and I may have more than one design on one video. So again, hit that like button, add a comment if you want to see more of these. But for this one, I want to get into a little bit more of the explanation to make sure we're covering it. The thing that's happening here now is if we look at the lumber, right? See 6.9, it's got 5 more coming. Now, what's going to happen is that the city storage in Toledo will fill up first before the warehouse starts putting stuff out to the other goods. And I do believe I cover that in the warehouse fundamentals video, but it's worth repeating here that the growth, the lumber that we want distributed out to London and to Grand Rapids, it will take a longer time to get out there because it's going to go here first, right? Similarly, corn is going to go to Grand Rapids first and then work its way out to the closest next one, which would be Toledo, and then to London. So I wonder, do we have any corn coming here? Yeah, see, we've got 3 on its way. But if we looked at London, I don't know if we would have any. We might. No, see, we have 0. So it's going to have to fill up Grand Rapids and continue topping it off. and go out to Toledo before it gets to London. So that's kind of a trade-off here with this one, with this design and use of warehouses in general, is it takes a while for everything to kind of flow where you want it to go, right? But if we can look at this sugar, see it's starting to get sugar for Toledo, sugar for Grand Rapids, right? And as soon as this producer produces enough for it to run, we'll get sugar into that warehouse in London that's headed for the other two, which will help them grow. Similarly, when this guy here, if we look at this lumber train, he's got Toledo, Grand Rapids, there, he's got some for London. We're starting to get some for the other cities. So over time, these city-to-city lines will have more and more of the raw materials to carry. And there we're already getting double tick and single tick here, and London is starting to grow. So this will work just great. And what we'll do now is think about phase 2. So phase 1 is just setting up the 3 manufactured goods and the 4 raw materials: lumber, grain, sugar, and corn, right? But now phase 2 comes along. If we look again at our supply chain, we can see that from 35, 40, and 45,000 citizens, we're going to want 3 raw materials: milk, veggies, and fruit. And we're going to want to think about those the same way. So what we'll do there is look for a milk source. Now, this is weird. I have fired up this map, and sometimes you get milk right down here, which is very handy, very nice. Sometimes you don't. This is a don't. So we've got it over here. No, that's sugar. We've got it over here, which is not handy at all. We've got it up here, which is also not handy. We've got it up here, which is definitely not handy. I think we're going to go with this one, looking down the road to that clay. So we'll run milk into London, right? So this would be our setup for phase 2. We would run milk into London. So and all we have to do is just set up our warehouse, and we could have planned this out beforehand, right? I wanted to show you the kind of process and the way it goes. Here comes milk. It's going to come into London. Fruit, obviously, would be headed for Grand Rapids. There's fruit. And then veggies will be headed. They're down here. We're going to send those to our freight station in Toledo. Whoops. There they are. Veggies. All right, so let me go off and set that up. I'll be right back. All right, so I've set up the vegetable station with track down here, fruit up here, and way over here, milk coming down like this. And I went this way in anticipation of maybe bringing coal and clay into London as its third industry. The other thing you want to do as you're planning your clusters is think about where your industries are going. You know your beer, meat, cloth, that's your starting point. But your next set of things, you really want to think about clothing going in London and a third industry going there. Then you want to think about where would I put a sawmill. It would make sense to have it where your lumber is coming in directly. Where would I put alcohol, where I have fruit and or sugar coming in directly? So that can be either of these. And I'm thinking alcohol is going to go here with the fruit coming in, and then we'll actually add a direct sugar line so that we can make sure we feed that alcohol and not overtax our overall system moving sugar to Grand Rapids for the alcohol. Then the milk is a problem because you can see it's a problem because it's so far away, first of all. Well, if it comes to London, dairy would be great to put there, but I wouldn't want dairy necessarily as the third industry there because I'd really like clothing as the second one, right? And I'd have to wait to 90,000. But that may be the case. We may have dairy here as the third industry, but then that moves the ceramics to someplace else. So we get coal here, but we'd have to run the clay. So that milk being way out there is really a disadvantage for this particular cluster. It really is. It really does create some hardships. But anyway, it is what it is. So we would set up London. Let me just make sure I've got milk turned on in London. I do. So let's go out here to the milk, and we'll set up a line milk to the London freight. And we can see it runs the track we would expect it to run. It looks good. We'll run full trains. with their speedy Derwent. Now look at this with 43 days. Now, again, we want the 3, which would be a frequency of 18. 18 times 2 would be 36, so we need 3 trains to match our just our early requirements. Now, these cities actually none of them are big enough to need milk yet. We're just doing this in anticipation. And in your actual gameplay, what you would do is just monitor this and figure out, when do I need to set this up? And in terms of the money you have, when can I set it up, right? But you want to be timely with it, but you also got other tasks you're trying to get done. That's the beauty of actually playing the game and having challenges in front of you. In sandbox like this, it doesn't matter. We'll do whatever we want to do. All right, so here's another case. We want 18. We've got 12 days. That's beautiful. So the fruit's fine. The veggies we know will be fine because it's going to be a short line. Veggies to here. We're going to run full. And we're going to see it's a 10-day line. That's beautiful. Now, a quick word on the side, a bonus, if you will. Supply stations. You'll notice when I set up the phase 1 stuff like the lumber and the cattle, I didn't get all my supply stations. And I'd like to say it was intentional. It was, and I goofed up. But it does allow me to say this. Notice how right here, the grain, the veggies, the cattle are all coming together and going into this. The old me would have tried to put a supply station here and have all these lines be able to use it. The new me, after playing the game for much more and learning some lessons and getting some great feedback from you guys, there's 3 supply towers, 1 for each one, to get these trains out of the way and so they don't hold one another up, right? The lumber's getting its supplies over here, not trying to go over here and play with all the other trains. We don't want to create any situations, to the extent we can avoid it, we don't want any situations where our supplies are going to hold up other trains, right? Getting supplies, you want to spread them out. It's better to have more supply stations and less frequent stops from your trains than having everybody thinking, oh, I'm going to save all that supply station money, and every train is going to always resupply at the same spot. That's a recipe for disaster. So spread out your supply stations. And even here, look at this. I've got a supply station on the return route, the dedicated line, like a Jan Jansen. This supply tower is like a Jan Jansen for this grain for beer line, to get it out of the way so it's not down here and all these trains coming in here are clogging up the system, right? Okay, so now let's let this thing run. We've moved to phase 2, and now it's just a function of watching the growth and watching for 40,000 when they hit 40,000. Now, if we had immigration officers, we don't. By the way, did I even research? Yeah, I did one research here. I did the research for warehouses, obviously, because we were able to do them. Now, we don't have immigration offices in this. If we did, let me see, where are they? The original one for immigration offices, probably over here. Yeah, so we're too early to even have an immigration office is available to us. So when they hit 50, we'll put libraries in to help with the growth, but they'll have some impact. They'll certainly help us. But you can see how well we're growing these cities right now. And London will just get better. London's demand satisfaction will improve as we get enough goods. See, it's got 5 corn coming. That'll help it a bunch, because that'll get this 0 moving forward. And you notice these rolling averages, we know that the lumber will get better and better if we can keep a steady supply. It'll move itself up to 100% as a rolling average over the week. See there, we got our first corn coming in. So now our rate is going to go up and we're going to do really well. Okay, so that's a 3-city cluster with the freight nearby. What is this? I've obviously forgotten to make this run full. Okay. And I think that was it. Okay, and these are waiting, and that's fine. That's fine. We don't need it. We've got plenty of grain coming in the system. There goes the load. And the veggies won't run until veggies are needed. So that's all good. So I'm going to let this run for a bit. And In fact, I will let it run until all the cities have hit 100,000. I'm not going to put in the universities. I'm just going to let them go. So we can kind of get a rough idea of how fast this would go. Now, this is not totally indicative of what would happen in gameplay because, again, I have unlimited money here. See this infinity? I have all the money I need, so I can build this up much faster. It's April 1830, and look at the extensive network we already have. But just to give us an idea of how this works and how well it goes, I'm just going to let it run, and I'll be right back. Okay, we've just hit our first city with 40,000, Toledo. Now, that's a good time to think about your industries. We should have already planned this out a bit. But what we're thinking about here is we would love to have a sawmill in Toledo because of the lumber that's already being delivered directly. And if we look at this, we know that we want, now you can see here we're starting to get demand for the milk and the veggies, and they're on their way now. We're not quite there on the fruit. But then the first thing we're going to want is clothing. We'd like to keep that with the cloth. You don't have to. We could put clothing right here and then set up the ability to deliver those. We've already got the delivery, the ability to take cloth out and bring it over here to a clother. But I think given the fact that, the next thing up after that's going to be planks, we're just going to set up our wooden planks business here in Toledo, right? So we'll give Toledo wooden planks. Now, what we would want to do is think about this as we're going to be feeding 3 cities. So eventually, not right away, but eventually we would want to level this up to the point where it's making 3.2 a week for now. And that would match the demand in the other cities. So let's do that. And now what we'd want to do is revisit. We've put in a new industry. That means that we've changed the demand for lumber because we need 3.2 lumber per week now, plus the 3 we needed for the cities. So now we've kind of changed this whole deal till now we need lumber at 6, right? So if we need lumber at 6, then we need to look at the frequency of this line. A demand of 6 means we need a frequency of 9. We've got 14, so we're going to need a couple of trains. 2 times 9 is 18. That's fast enough. So now we're going to add a second train to our delivery of lumber to make sure that we can keep this guy happy, plus keep lumber going out to the rest of the system and keep the planks going out to the rest of the system. Now, again, in the real world, in a scenario or something, you would level this up over time. You'd have to watch it a little bit more. We have the luxury of unlimited funds, so we can just go ahead and bump it up right now. And the fact that it's producing more than we need, it's going to shut down and be inefficient. We don't care because, again, we have all the money we need. So we're going to watch London and see when it hits 40. We're going to watch Grand Rapids, see when it hits 40. We're going to put liquor here. We're going to put clothing here. And I'm just going to let it run right up until we have 3 industries in each, just to give you an idea of how well this works. And you notice just how very, very little micromanagement we're having to give it. We're getting 99.7, 92.3, 93.5. This is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Okay, we just hit 40,000 in London. So we're going to put the clothing in there as planned, and we're going to bump it up to produce 3 so that it can feed all 3 cities. And that's going to mean we're going to need more cloth. Now, we don't own the cloth, and that's good because the cloth manufacturer here will adjust. We just need to think about if he bumps up to 3, he already had 3, we need a 6. We need this line right here to be a frequency of a 9. Again, if that doesn't make sense to you, go watch the fundamentals videos on how many trains and how to optimize. But we're good here. We got a 6-day line. It's a nice short line for our wool. So that's all good. So now we've got cloth. Now we've got an opportunity here. We're going to put the liquor in Grand Rapids. And we could contemplate putting dairy in Grand Rapids. That would be okay. But we're going to put the liquor right here. It's the next man up, if you will, in the supply chain. And we're going to make it produce 3. There we go. And again, in real game, you would do that as you could and as you needed it. I'm just going to go ahead and do it because I can, because I got the money. Now we want to think about our deliveries. we looked at the wool for the clothing because the clothing needs the cloth, so it's all good. Then we could look at the sugar and fruit for Grand Rapids. Now the good news is the fruit's already going directly there. What I would want to do is build a second line like this out of platform 2 that also ran full, but is actually taking sugar directly to Grand Rapids because it now has a much bigger demand. So out of track 2, running full, freight line 13 days. Now 13 days, is that fast enough? What do we need for sugar now? Our sugar demand, it shows 0.4, it'll be more than that in just a moment. It hadn't registered that it's got this distillery yet. Okay, let's look at it now. It's 2, okay, a 2 would be a 28, so this is good. 1 train is fine. So what we need here on the fruit, we need to think of the fruit as 1, 2, 3 for the cities plus the demand for the distillery. The distillery only needs 1.6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, about a 5. So we would need like an 11 frequency here on this line. And we have a 12, so we would add a train to it. Run a couple of trains now with the fruit into Grand Rapids. The other thing now, as we're getting around this 40,000 mark, we need to look at our city-to-city lines. We're now adding demand, right? We're adding another supply from each of the cities. So we've actually added at least a 1 to each of these. So if you think of like, this is now 2 plus, what do we got? Well, what all we got coming out of here? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, right? And we've got that coming out of Grand Rapids. We've got 4. So the worst side is this 5 demand. We need our frequency here to be see where is it? London to here we go. Toledo to Grand Rapids. We need this frequency to be more like an 11. It's 15. So we're going to add a train to the Toledo Grand Rapids. Then we're going to say, okay, well, Toledo to London is now 1, 2, 3, 4 coming this way, coming out of London, and 5 from Toledo. So again, it's the same 11. So if we look at our freight line from London to Toledo, we want it to be 11 frequency. It's right now 11 times 2 would be 22. That's not enough. We need 1 more train. There we go. And that will allow us to move more freight between these two. And then what's left? London to Grand Rapids. London to Grand Rapids, we've got 4 coming out of here, and we've got 4 coming out of here. So we would need something like a 13 frequency on that line. And London freight to Grand Rapids freight, a 14 frequency, 14 times 2 is 28. That would work and go. So what we've done is bump up our city-to-city lines, as well as bumping up some of our raw materials based on the fact that we have now these manufactured goods in the system. So the 40,000 is a good checkpoint for that. The other one we could probably look at is, we could do 60,000, but I think we'll just wait on 90, and we'll do another checkpoint at 90,000 when we put in our third industries into these cities. And if we look at it now, we'd be thinking of, okay, I think furniture would be a good one here to use those planks. Over here, we could put them, I think the dairy's going to go in Grand Rapids, and then ceramics here in London, and that would give us all of our goods that we needed. So that's kind of lovely. That'll be the plan. All right, welcome back. We have just started to hit 90,000 here in Toledo, and we're hitting about 80 in Grand Rapids and 74. Now, you notice I haven't even used libraries at all. I just sort of didn't use them to see how we would do without them. And obviously, like here at London, for example, we're at 75%. Now, if we had the library, we'd be at 85%. So obviously that would be better, right? So the libraries, the immigration offices, remember them, they're very important. The other thing that's interesting is we're not getting fruit outside of Grand Rapids. Now, of course, we're consuming a bunch of fruit for the distillery, which is making really overproducing for what we need, apparently. But, well, let's just see if that's true. Are you getting liquor down here? I think you are. Yeah, see, they're getting plenty of liquor here, and they're getting plenty of liquor, I think, in London as well. Yes, they are. So that's not a problem. But the fruit isn't keeping up with the production isn't keeping up. See, we've got train kind of waiting, so we've got more capacity for bringing it down here. So this might be a case where you would think about buying the fruit. And I have noticed fruit always seems to be the one. It seems to be the one that doesn't like to grow. So we're going to take that and bump that up to 4.8. Now, if we look at our demand for fruit, we've got 2.4, 3.1. We got about 4, so this is better. That's better. But our owner was slow. All the rest of them seem to be doing fine, as far as I can tell. I haven't looked at them in detail, and I don't want to, because one of the points of this is to be able to do this without a ton of micromanagement. So the other thing we want to do now is put in our furniture business. Now, when we put in the furniture business and we upgrade it to produce 3, okay, it needs 1.6 planks. So we've just increased our planks requirement to, well, let's just let this run for a moment, let it recalculate given that. Now let's look at our planks requirement. Our planks requirement now is 0.8 here, and well, basically 1 in both of those as we'd expect. 1 here as we would expect. 3, and then the 3.2 for the furniture. So now we've bumped that up to 6, right? And what we've really done is increase our need for lumber by more. So now our need for lumber is actually, let's look at that. It's actually, see, it's a little more than 1. It's 1.6 and 1.5, so that's like 3, and then 3 would be 3 plus 1.6 here for the city would be, well, the 5 that it needs total, 5, 6, 7, 8.1. So we need more like 9. So we need our frequency here to be a 6. So let's look at our frequency for the lumber, and 6 times 2 would be 12. That's not enough. 3 times 6 would be 18, which is fast enough. Okay, so we need to add a train for our lumber. So we added the furniture and we added a train. That's kind of the pattern. Now, it's not an exact pattern because it depends. If the lumber is way out here, we might have to add 2 trains to get it all the way back there. Like the milk, if we haul milk to Grand Rapids, we're going to have maybe even faster delivery, but we'll see when we get there. So I'll be back in a minute. Oh, and our city-to-city lines, we want to think about it now. We've got, if we're building a line out of here, we've got 6 items coming out of here. So we're going to want our frequency to be more like a 9 for city to city coming out of here versus the 11 we were doing before. We should be fine. Let's just double check one. Let's just double check this guy here and see if he's a 9. 9 times 2 is 18. Yeah, he is. He's fine. So we've got enough trains running city to city right now. And that's probably going to hold true. We're probably good on city to city lines, trains. We just need to get these other 2 industries in here. And I'll be back in a moment when that happens. Okay, now we've just hit 90,000 in London. And I did put a library in London just to speed it up a little bit. And should have used the libraries all the way through because they really do help. This 86 could be 96 in Grand Rapids, for example. And our last thing we're missing is actually ceramics. So let's put ceramics in London. And let's give it a bump up to 3. So we need 3.2 clay and 1.6 coal. Clay's out here right next to our milk line. Now, I did, by the way, Grand Rapids hit 90. I put the dairy in Grand Rapids and bumped this up to, I believe it's 5 trains. We've got 5 trains hauling the milk. Yes, we have 5 trains hauling the milk. And the milk right now is up to a level 3. And see, we've got plenty of milk to haul. Right? That's not our problem. You also notice traffic jams, 1%. If we have this, what I think of as large stations with auto signals, and on the freight, and actually most of the delays I've been watching it, are on the passenger lines. So we're looking beautiful on these freight. This one freight station with 4 platforms does a beautiful job of handling this if it doesn't have to deal with the passenger traffic as well. You can see I've got Toledo maxed out at 100,000 because I haven't put a university in. I'm not going to. I want to just run all these to 100,000 to show you what it's like. Notice we're under a year and we're practically there. This guy here is, we gave it to ceramics. We're going to give it coal, coal. So I'll be right back right after I put in the coal and the clay. All right, so I've got 1 train hauling coal, 2 trains hauling clay into London to match the demand for coal and clay. And you'll notice, as I said, we've got Toledo's kind of bumping around the 100,000 mark, and Grand Rapids will quickly be hitting that 100,000 and peaking. And of course, you would keep them going if you wanted bigger cities. And London is at 93 and growing at a good rate. So we've under a year now. Of course, you can't do that this quickly in a regular game because you just don't have that unlimited funds. But this just shows you what's theoretically possible and how well this works. This particular video has been quite a bit longer than the rest of them in the series will be, because I covered a lot of extra stuff like how you optimize the lines and all that kind of stuff. I will not be covering that again in the rest of them. I'll just refer you back to this one if you're unsure about how to optimize your lines and get the right number of trains running and all that. Again, I'd reiterate, look at this traffic jams, almost nothing, and beautiful city growth. And this is my favorite, the nearness of you, setting up warehouses to take the freight in at the closest possible city within your system, and allowing your city lines to distribute the goods throughout, and then managing all your goods so that you have 9 unique goods in here. These cities will keep right on growing and keep right on growing. There you see we've got them all topped out at 100,000. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found something that's useful for you and it'll help you become a better player. I hope you'll like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join us for our next Railway Empire 2 video. Thank you.